Hey guys, thanks everyone for coming. This is really awesome that we've got almost 10 people signed up. To let everyone know, like we invited, this is for all of the recent cohorts. So cohort 29, 30, and 31. So this is all the cohorts from 2020. We're starting it with, I'm starting to try it out with this. And maybe in the future it can expand to some of the other years or cohorts or graduates and alumni. But first we wanted to give it to our recent alumni. And we also wanted to make sure that this acts for everyone as a way for all of us to kind of stay in touch and like keep learning. As much as maybe everyone here will learn something about making sourdough today. All right, so we're gonna be talking about, I don't know if I made it for everyone, but yes, I do make a decent amount of sourdough at my house. I have worked in restaurants before that bake their own bread, but most of the stuff that I'm doing here today is kind of self-taught in terms of measurements and knowing the starters. It's a really cool thing. I talked, Cindy and I were talking about this. She worked at in San Francisco, the bar tartine, Cindy? Bake?
That's right.
Yeah, so, and it's a really, really well-known, institution. And she was saying that her boss there would always making sourdough for years and years and years, and he was always learning something new about this, about it. So yeah, like I said, a lot of stuff that I'm going over, like, yes, it's stuff that I've read or I was taught, but then the feel of dough and everything is stuff that I just taught myself with being at home. So first thing I'm gonna go over, guys, and this is some stuff that definitely you already know, but I just want to go over it. And the first thing I'm going to go over are just like some tools that I'm going to be using today. Not all of these tools are absolutely necessary, but some of them really, really do help out, okay? And I'll go with like the ones that we're kind of familiar with first. If everyone remembers this from when we were in class, this is a bench scraper, okay? This is really great for cutting dough, also for picking dough up. This is also really great for cleaning your tabletop because you're gonna have little bits of dough that stick and you kind of scrape it off, okay? So this is a bench scraper. I have one that's got a wooden handle. They make ones that are all metal. This is just the one I have, okay? This is called a bowl scraper, okay? Plastic, flexible, okay? This is for scraping the sides of bowl scraper. You scrape the bowl, all right? But it helps get stuff out. If you're, it helps to mix dough in the bowl, okay? And what's really great, curved side, and it also has a flat side, okay? So you can use it curved side of bowls, but then sometimes, hey, if you want it on top of your countertop, it also kind of acts as like a little bit of a scraper, okay? So those are two of the handheld towels tools we're gonna have. This is gonna be for later. Hardware store, right? Razor. Everyone can see that? It's just a little razor, okay? This is what we're gonna use to score the bread before it gets cooked, okay? I'll go into that, a lot of this stuff later. Parchment paper. I'll show you what we do with it. Just a small piece of parchment paper. A little tray. This is not really necessary, but I'll show you later how it goes. Okay. Everyone can see this? Dutch oven pot. Heavy ceramic lid. These are very helpful, okay? See how it's like really old, you know, but this is gonna be for cooking the bread in. Rack, sheet pan for resting the bread, okay? Well, you want to rest it on a rack so air circulates underneath. If you put the fresh baked bread right on top of something flat, it's going to get steamed and it's going to steam at the bottom and it's going to get soggy. Now, this is really, I view this as an investment, okay? They're not necessary, but I do think they're kind of important. I think Cindy would agree with me on this too. You know, a lot of times they're $30, $35. Sometimes you get them, but a digital scale is super helpful. Everything I'm doing today, I'm not going to talk too much about measurements of what I'm doing today, but everything I do when I bake is in grams. Now that's just me, okay? I'm not saying like, oh, I'm the greatest person ever because I do that. I'm just saying it's like that's when I do it. This scale can do milliliters, ounces, pounds and ounces. Oh, cool, you can't see that. Grams, you know. So these are just helpful. I got this on sale. I think it was like $30 like a few years ago. Okay. Iscali brand. You can look them up.
Yeah, you can find them pretty easily on Amazon. Sometimes even if you go to TJ Maxx or like Marshalls and stuff, you can usually find a decent digital scale.
Yeah.
Anywhere from like $10 to like $50, depending on how advanced you want to get. But a decent one you can get, that Scali band, you can get on Amazon for like $15. And
yeah,
I have one very similar.
The important thing is like, you know, with this, like it just really opens up the door for you to do more stuff. There's nothing wrong with cup measurements. If you have them, you can definitely use them. But for a lot of baking, a lot of pastry, a lot of things, I mean, even if you're like cutting stuff or like portioning stuff, you know, you can see it. So I do highly recommend this. It's not necessarily, but I do kind of highly recommend. A KitchenAid. Not everyone has one. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to use it, but you don't need it, okay? So there's that. I do have an oven over here. Hold on a second. Yes, I do have an oven at my house. It's at 460 degrees, okay? Just getting that ready. Okay. So, sourdough time. Okay, I'm just reaching in the fridge here. Everyone can see this, okay? It's a plastic container. It is from Crafty Beaver, which is a little hardware store. This is what I keep a starter in, okay? Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Plastic, it's cheap, it's like $3. This Ziploc I've had for a year, whatever now, okay? You don't have to overthink it. Okay, so if we'd see this, right? I'm gonna try and angle it so you can see, okay? Starter, all right? This is the starter I use. I'm gonna talk to you about starter and hydration levels, okay? Which is just about how much water is in here, okay? So you see this starter? It's not coming out, it's not falling, okay? It's pretty hard. It's also been in the fridge. So, and I'm gonna send you a recipe for the starter that I use and everything and some other kind of reference guides. Okay, so a starter, guys, a starter is basically, well, first, when we talk about sourdough, everyone knows, so sourdough, traditional sourdough, it basically just has flour, water, and salt. Now, different types of flour you can put in there, yes, but it's basically flour, water, salt, red flour usually, but flour, water, salt. It's the oldest form of leavened bread. And a lot of reasonings, they think that a lot of reasonings, like a lot of food, it was discovered by mistake, which wouldn't really surprise me because if you have flour and water and you let it sit overnight, it starts to get bubbly, okay? That's the yeast. Don't ask me what the scientific name is, but it has a scientific name. We did talk about yeast in class, so it's all natural yeast in here, okay? So basically how I got this going was and I'm not gonna go over too many measurements, but I took flour, I took water, and I took a little honey, okay? I mixed that together. I let that sit overnight for about 36 hours. Then I take more flour, more water, add that in it. What I am doing is I am feeding the yeast. The yeast is a bacteria. Now it's growing. Now it's feeding, right? When it feeds, it releases gas and it bubbles up. Kind of like if anyone has baked before or done anything with doughs, it's all very similar. But in this, it's all natural, right? There's no added yeast to it. So add flour, add water, and then let it sit for another 24 hours. Then remove some of it, throw that in the garbage, add more flour and water. Now we're feeding the starter and we're refreshing it. It takes about 5 to 7 days, kind of depending on how much you want to do it. And then you have your starter, right? And then your starter is this, and then this becomes the base of what you're going to do for your future breads. Now, hydration levels, right? And I hope I'm not boring anyone. I know I'm talking a lot. Hydration levels, okay? If anyone has worked with starters before, there are a multitude of different types of starters. The biggest difference you will see is how much water is in them, okay? Sometimes you will see starters that are more running. Like if I took this with another and poured it, it would just go all over the place. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. This one is stiffer. The one thing I've noticed is that when you work with a starter that has more water content, the yeast eats through it quicker. So you have to refresh it more and more. Me at home, I am not baking a loaf of bread a day. I mean, it would be awesome to, but like, come on, I don't need to eat a loaf of bread a day. So, what I make is I make one that's a little stiffer. It takes longer for the yeast to eat through there. It doesn't need to be fed as much. And this way I can put this in the fridge for 3, 4, 5 days and just let it sit in there. The more flour and water I add to it, like the larger amount, if I go on vacation, I'm going to add a lot more flour and water so the yeast can keep feeding, because I'm going to be on vacation. I can't take care of it. So if you have, just to reiterate, this is 2 parts flour to 1 part water, right? That's what this is, and it's stiff. If you did equal parts, it's going to be very like loose glue. But just remember, you need to feed that more. You can't let that sit for days and days and days, or the yeast will die. And if it dies, sometimes you can bring it back, but it'll spoil. Okay? So that's my little starter thing. Does that, and if anyone has a question, feel free to ask, but hopefully that makes sense to everyone about the hydration levels, right? So there's that. So now I have to do this in certain methods just to try and keep a flow going. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make dough, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh the starter, because there's not going to be any salt that goes in here. There is going to be salt that goes in the dough. I don't want to make a dough in here that has salt and then put starter in here, because then I'll introduce salt. But by refreshing the starter first by itself, I don't have to take this and scrub it out and everything. I can just put my next dough, like the dough I'm going to make, right in there. So I got my little scale. I got my little paper towel to help me with my sweat. Okay. Make sure I'm on grams. I'm going to show you another really great thing about having a starter that is really kind of thick. And I shouldn't say thick, I should say stiff. Okay. So I've already got my stuff like measured here for the starter. Okay. It's by weight. 2 parts flour, 1 part water. By weight, right? It doesn't look like 2 to 1, but by weight. Okay. I'm going to try to show this to you guys. It's going to be a little difficult. I just refreshed this yesterday. Does everyone
How often do you refresh your dough, Chef?
What's up?
How often do you refresh your starter?
This one, because it's stiff, I do it every like 3 to 4 days. And I put it in the fridge. I don't leave it out at room temperature. I don't yeah.
And then do you do the same amounts that you're doing right now?
Like when I refresh it?
Yes.
Yeah, so this amount right here, I'm going to take, this is 200 grams of flour. This is 100 grams of water. I'm going to take 200 grams of starter from this. Actually, I'll do 100. I'm going to do 100 grams. Really quick. Does everyone see like the little bubbles, or, like the holes? Right? Yep. Okay. So that's the yeast eating and creating gas. And that's how you know it's kind of alive. What's really nice about the stiff starter is I can just like peel stuff off. It's easy to weigh. So I'm
How
going
old
to
is
weigh
that
100
one?
grams of starter. See, it's kind of just really easy. You just rip it.
What were you saying, Brandon?
I was wondering how old that particular starter is.
14 months.
Okay. Aren't there like starters that you could keep for like years?
Oh, yeah. There's a place in Michigan. There's a place in Michigan called Zingerman's Delicatessen. It's won James Beard Awards. It's a really old school spot. It's really cool. It's awesome. It's in Ann Arbor. It's in a college town. It's kind of goofy. It's really eclectic. Yeah. They've had their starter since they opened like 27 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I got 100 grams. I got 100 grams of starter, 200 grams of flour, and 100 grams of water. Remember, this starter's 50% hydration, so I always want to keep it 50% hydration. 50% hydration means out of the flour, if there's 200 grams of flour, cut that in half, 100 grams of water, 50% of the weight of the flour, not of the total of the flour. And I'm going to try and go as quick as possible about washing my hands. I don't know how they do it on network TV to make it so smooth, but okay, so like I said, here's this. Just low, just like let it go. So now, just in a bowl, whatever you got. So does that make, I don't know, anyone can just go thumbs up or whatnot, if that makes sense. So I'm refreshing my starter first, and I don't have to wash the KitchenAid bowl. Like if there's little scraps of the refreshed starter in there, it's totally fine. It's not the end of the world. However, if I made my dough first, which has salt in it, I would have to really scrape this out because I don't want salt then getting into the starter, okay? So, now for the dough, this is 300 grams of bread flour, 10 grams of kosher salt, bread flour, King Arthur bread flour. We'll talk about flours in a little bit, but that percentage is important, okay? 100 grams of starter,
I missed the amount of salt.
Okay, really quick. So I got my starter in here that I'm refreshing with, right? I got my starter in here for the dough that we're making. I have this starter left over. If you're not doing anything with it, just right in the garbage. It's really sad. I don't like doing it, but it's what you do.
Hey, Chef, we had a question about how much salt.
Hold on a second. I'm going to try and turn this up here. Oops. Sorry, say again?
How much salt did you just use?
10 grams.
10 grams.
Okay, so starter container, it's pretty empty. You really don't, you don't really need to worry about scraping it too much, okay? You just don't want like tons in there. So this is the stuff for the dough, right? And we're just gonna set this aside. I'll bring it back later. Okay, so while this is working, sorry, I just turned it up a little. We can talk about flour a little, right? So if anyone remembers, I just noticed there's a bunch of chats.
We're just chatting, Chef.
Oh, gotcha, okay. Well, just, yeah, thank you. You just let me know if it pertains to me. Like
Yes,
I got a booger on my nose or something. So
Oh
okay.
yeah, I'll let you know.
So flour. Okay, so I don't know. I hope everyone remembers when we were in class and we were doing the Chef Cindy was leading the pastry part. When we were working with pastry flour or cake flour. Does everyone remember that? You can just thumbs up, hopefully. Okay, so gluten forming protein content. Okay. Everyone knows when you bite into a sourdough, it's got chew to it, right? When I say chew, I don't mean it's like dense, right? It's got chew, though. If you take a knife, right, and you like spread something on it, it holds together, but it's ideally like light and airy, but the structure of it holds together, right? Cake is a little different. You don't necessarily want to pick up a piece of cake and have it so strong that when you smear something on it, you know, like it holds its shape. Like cake is nice and gentle and soft, and like the frosting needs to be soft. So, but with bread, when you have bread, you literally want to cut into it. And when you like smear something on it, you don't just want it to fall apart. You want it to be strong. But strong, like I said, does not mean having it be dense, right? And we're going to talk about that with bread form and everything. But bread flour has a lot of gluten-forming protein content. And basically what that does is it ensures that the protein that is created, the gluten strands that are created, are really, really strong, and they'll hold up. If we did this exact whole technique with like a cake flour, it would probably be delicious, but like it would just like fall apart. Okay, so that's bread flour. King Arthur actually just changed their emblem like a month ago. Like that's new. I just noticed that. Okay.
Yeah, they did a whole rebrand because they're sticking to mostly flour and ingredients and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm just gonna take this and just gonna like mash it a little bit in here. Okay. Want to see that? Okay. It does not need to be completely thoroughly mixed. Okay. It doesn't need to be smooth. What's going to happen is the yeast, the natural yeast that's in here, it's going to come alive. It's going to start eating and bubbling and doing all the stuff it does. So it's going to like keep mixing on its own, right? I learned that from there's actually a method, I think it's called the Autolyze Method, but I actually learned that a long time ago from a pastry chef I worked for when he made bread. And he was talking about like how you can just kind of like sprinkle water on and sprinkle flour on it, and it'll kind of do its own thing. So now it's room temp, okay? No big deal, it's fine. I'm gonna put it back in here. I'm just flattening it. I'm not like flattening it, I'm just like doing this, okay? It's going right back in there. Boom, just like that. And then I'm going to let this sit at room temperature 4 or 5 hours, something like that, just to get the yeast like kind of going a little bit. Then I'm going to put it in the fridge, and I'm going to leave it in there until I need it, but not too long, because I want to make sure that it doesn't go bad. Okay. Remember what I said before? Still some stuff in there, right? It's no big deal. Right? I am like, I can be anal about things and exact and whatever, but this is not going to kill. The only thing that's in here is flour and water, just a little bit. Okay, remember? Starter flour salt is 225 grams of water. Okay. Okay, next up, while that is going, remember, okay, so, sorry, going back to what we were talking about with starters and hydration levels, right? Also, we have to talk about hydration levels in your dough, which is super, super, super important, okay? So when you have really light, airy sourdough, the reason behind that is not because there's always a ton of yeast or anything. It really has to do with, a lot of times, it's the water content and the hydration level. So if it makes sense, so I use a starter that is pretty stiff. So when I make my dough, I'm gonna actually need to add more water to loosen it up a little bit. I know it's kind of confusing and sounds really weird, but I'll show you once we get the dough like in the hands. So basically, if the wetter, the higher hydration level you have a better chance of having a crispier crust and an airy interior. Because it makes sense, it's water, it steams, it puffs up, right? Like the yeast is working, it's eating its way through. And you'll see when this dough is going, and I might have to angle this a little more so you can see, but one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're making bread is they feel that it needs to like come together, knead it a few times, and then it should be like a solid shape, like a boule, like a solid ball. And that's really, really not the case all the time, because what you're doing is at that point, the dough has too much flour in it, just to start. When you're making bread and it's in here and it's working, the biggest thing that we're doing is we're working the gluten. So remember that in that high bread flour, that high protein gluten forming whatever that percentage was, the wording they had for it. What we're doing when we're mixing is we're creating those gluten strands, right? So if you throw ingredients in a mixer, right, and it comes together right away, that doesn't mean that you didn't work any gluten, you didn't do anything. It just came together in the ball. And because it came together so quickly, that means you're gonna have a denser loaf of bread. Now, certain breads are meant to be dense, so don't get that confused, but we're talking about sourdough. So when you're making sourdough and you're making this, if it comes together right away, you're not gonna have those big, you cut into sourdough and those big air pockets and they're all irregular. You're not gonna have that. It's more of gonna have the texture and the appearance of just like white bread at the store. And that's really not what you want. So, and this is actually really cool, guys. I mean, it's not like always fun, but I do want to show you because this is really cool. Okay, so the first thing, I really don't know, it's going to be tough to see, but okay, yuck. And that actually worked pretty well. There's this bit at the bottom, the very bit at the bottom where the hook actually can't get to. Okay, so whatever, it's no big deal. But you see how it's kind of like thick glue almost. This might be a little too dry, but it actually will be all right. Okay, this does not look like bread dough, right? I mean, it doesn't. Okay, so I've got a little container of flour. Okay, we're gonna turn this into dough. Bowl scraper. Okay. How do I want to do this? Bowl scraper. I'm just going to scrape. Actually, and this was something else I taught myself the other day, so this is cool. So I'm going to just get the dough off the hook, right? No problem. Goes over there. It's a KitchenAid bowl, the handle. Put my hand right through there. Once again, that does not look like dough, right? It just looks like a mess of something. The bowl scraper, get everything off the sides. Now, I just taught myself this, and this is going to be basically impossible for you guys to see, but I'm picking it up. Now it's already starting to come together, and I'm like flattening it against the side of the bowl. It's still not, there's still bits. It's not a complete full ball, you know? But I'll show you
Hey,
guys.
Chef, maybe if you flatten it against the bowl and just, oh, well, you took it out.
Sorry.
You flatten it against the bowl and then like show us what that looks like when you flatten. But
So, scraping bowl. Okay. Now everything's out of there, you know, for the most part. Okay. Can you guys see this? I know it's not close, right? But do you see how it's kind of like mushy, right? Right? Okay. Like eagle claws or talons. This actually came together somewhat quicker than normal. Okay, it gets in your hands, right? It sticks, right? That's fine. And all I'm doing, you can do a little kneading, but I'm pulling. I'll do it from the side, maybe. I'm pulling and then folding, right? All that is doing.
Chef, if you can shift the dough just a little bit closer to the edge of the counter, or that. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Oop.
No, just go back. There you go. Perfect.
See? Does everyone see? That does not look like a ball of dough, right? Right? It doesn't, right? It's just, it is what it is, right? But I'm pulling and then folding it over. Okay, I'm creating these air pockets. The faster you work with it, okay, the more it comes together. Oh no. I don't mean oh no, everything's fine. Nobody panic, except me, okay? So it's coming together. This actually came together really quickly. I don't know if it's like something's wrong or, okay. I don't mean something's wrong. I just mean like, you know, something's in the air. Okay. Flour in the bowl, okay? I just use the same bowl that I had, okay? Like, I don't want to dirty more stuff. I mean, if you want to, you can, okay? It's still tacky, okay? But by doing that little working, it's coming together, right? Do you see just that little bit? Everyone saw though, right? When I first took it out of the machine and I pulled it with the dough hook and it looked all like weird and alien-like, and now it's actually coming together. It's still very, very soft, okay? Okay. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. It's not like crazy smooth. That's weird. It's not crazy smooth. It also, if you hold it, it does kind of fall between the fingers. So if that'll give you like, it's very, very soft, okay? I'm gonna put this in here, but first I wanna show you guys something because we're doing this in real time, or as much as possible in real time. My girlfriend just left. I think she got tired of hearing me talk about dough. So, okay, so 460-degree oven. This, remember the Dutch oven? Nothing's in there, just the lid and everything. It's going right in the oven. So.
Hey, Chef, I have a question.
Yeah, shoot.
What if you don't have a Dutch oven? What else can you bake it in?
I've seen people do it in glass baking dishes. If you have like those old like casserole style, I have some. I just don't want to pull them out. But they're like, you could do them like old pie dishes. You can kind of do it in anything, but I will tell you this: like one of the coolest things is that, like everything I've been doing so far. Yeah, like I read books or like I have some technique, but like this is like most of it is like self-taught. Like I mean, like I kind of learned like when I first started bringing bread in with Cindy, I was using a baking stone. And the bread was good, but it wasn't like exactly what I wanted. So then I knew about using a Dutch oven. Then I started playing around with the Dutch oven. Like there could be a piece of equipment that you have that will work. You know, like this sautoir, okay? This is just like a basic saute pan, right? Stainless steel. Hey, it's copper on the outside, but it's beaten to hell. This might work. I haven't tried it yet. Maybe I should. But like the one thing you have to do is if you're going to use something like this or the Dutch oven or I don't know about glass. I'll have to look up with it. But like you want to preheat it. You want to put it in there, and we'll talk about that right now. But I know cast iron. You can definitely do it in cast iron. That's a very common thing. Okay, so I'm gonna try and do this.
Would you cover it with foil? Since there's not really a lid for it?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, with cast iron, you probably can get a lid, but with the other option.
Yeah, you could probably do it with foil, but you want to make sure, it's kind of hard because you want to make sure that the bread can actually rise. If you don't have a lid, I would suggest trying it without a lid. A lid is ideal, not 100% necessary. Cindy, were you waving or? Oh no, I didn't know if you were like, oh, I have it, or you were like, like devious, like.
No, I'm literally playing with my hair tie.
Okay, so this dough, right, that I made, this is gonna go back in this bowl for an hour, okay, and it's just gonna rest in there. When it comes out, I'm gonna use the bench bowl scraper. I'm gonna take it out. Then it's gonna be much softer, but it's also gonna be much smoother, right? It's gonna like finish kind of doing its own thing. But I'm keeping this out because I want to show you this. Okay. Where's my stuff? Okay. Parchment paper. Now this, guys, is kind of cool. This is called a banneton. It is a wicker basket. They are about $15. $15. They come with a little liner. This is a linen liner. This is not cotton, okay? I'll go into more of that, okay? I just want you to see. Does everyone see the difference, right? I'm trying to hold it like, you see how high this is? And then you see how high this is, okay? This rested, this goes in here. I'm gonna wrap it with saran wrap. Sits for 1 hour. I take it out. I kind of fold it and shape it, you know, just like I was doing earlier, just making sure. Back in the bowl with flour, 1 hour. Take it out, shape it, put it into a banneton with a lot of flour. This has been sitting for 17 hours at room temperature, okay? This dough, 17 hours. This is called slow, like it's a slow fermentation. When I talk to myself and I want to sound cool, I call it, I'm like, this is slow. This is like, I've told you guys before, like my favorite stuff to cook is stuff that takes a long time, or very technical because this is like building flavor, right? Now, remember what we were saying earlier about a starter that has a higher hydration? Higher hydration, yeast feeds quicker. This would not need to sit for 17 hours. This would need to sit, the dough would need to sit for like 5. So it all kind of depends from a professional standpoint on what kind of baking operation you have. If you have an actual like bakery that's baking breads and you're doing it with sourdough, most of the time they're gonna do it in the afternoon before they close. They're gonna let it sit overnight. It's gonna do that slow ferment. And then when they come in the next day, boom, ready to go right into the oven, okay? So, but maybe if you're working at a restaurant where it's like dinner only, and it's not like people aren't there all day long, maybe you have a starter that is a little more, that has a higher hydration. So at 12 o'clock you can get, or like 10 o'clock you can get the dough going. The dough is finally ready at like 1:30 or 2. It does that final rest, or that final like slow rise, and then it's ready to go. So this is always a pain, no matter how hard I try. So banneton, I don't put the liner in. I'll show you why. I'm just gently gonna turn that over, okay? It didn't come out. Oh, it's coming, I hope. This is like the moment of truth. So you don't wanna like shake it too much. You don't wanna pull on it. Just let gravity do its thing. And like, I always hope it doesn't take too long because it's kind of boring. But I have sat here before by myself in the quiet, waiting like 6 minutes for this to unmold. This is actually going feels quicker.
And I assume you don't want to just slam it onto the table.
No. Okay. Can you guys see the spiral? A little? Cool? That's why I don't use the liner. The linen. Here's the you see? You get that cool spiral design. This just knock. See the flour that's stuck in there? That's some of the moisture from the bread. Just let this dry out naturally, right? Just let it sit, dry out, and then you just can take a toothpick or a brush, just brush it out. Just make sure to brush it out far enough in advance before you actually bake your next loaf of bread. Like I'm not gonna brush it now, but I might brush it later tonight and then it's ready to go. This is just a little thing I put it on so flour doesn't get everywhere. Okay, so the reason I put it on this tray, it doesn't really matter like if the tray is there or not, but the reason I put it on this tray, so you guys can see this part. I'm really sorry I forgot to mention. Well, I'll go over it later. Okay, see the dough? Okay, you could definitely see it's bigger than what we had before, right? Also, try and look. I really don't know if I don't know if you guys can see jiggle, right?
Yeah, we can see jiggle, or I can see jiggle.
But it's not hard. Like I said before, the dough, it's not like a hard dough that you're like pushing and kneading and really getting after. It's got a lot of water in it. And because it has a lot of water in it, it's going to be like sticky and tacky and nasty. But the more you work it and fold it, and you slap it and do all that stuff, the gluten forms, and it gets stronger on its own, right? So that's why this dough, it's soft, right? It's soft. It is not rock hard, and that's what you're looking for when you make dough, specifically old sourdoughs that are naturally rising. Okay, I'm just doing this really quick because I told you I was going to do it. I don't want to lie. That was the first dough, right? So now from the time this was done, like I said, an hour, and I'm just going to take care of that later. Okay. So cool. The reason I say it's so cool, guys, because it's loose and jiggly. It's like it's alive, right? There's yeast, there's bacteria that are like feeding in this, and it's alive, and it's like jiggly. It's like what are those like miniature environments called? Is anyone into science?
Biodomes, or
but they're like a little form or something. Whatever. That's what's like I think of it here, except it tastes really good. Okay, so
Jeff, real quick, why don't you use the linen liner?
Because you don't get the spirals. Yeah, if you leave the linen in there, I mean it looks fine. It's absolutely fine, but I really like the look of the spirals. So, okay. And then you just kind of brush off a little of the flour. You can push it down just gently, right? Just gently, okay? Yeah, okay? Razor. It's whatever you want, okay? I did one that I was really liking the other day. And it's just quick, as quick as you can. The longer you take, you'll get snagged up.
How deep are you cutting, Chef?
Like a centimeter. Okay. I'll do this, okay? Okay, you guys see? See the circle? And you see it like underneath? Like, look at, I just cut that and it's almost like it's already expanding and growing. Okay. Towel, always dry towels, right? We're gathering hot stuff. I'm going to try to show you this, guys, the best I can, okay? This is all our pictures.
Chef, there's another question. Is there a reason to use the linen liner?
Not really. I mean, if you don't want to design, like if you don't want the spiral design, yeah. Like if you just want it like plain and you want to, I'll talk about that in one sec. So if you guys can see the oven, okay? Take the Dutch oven out, okay? Kind of work fast, right? You don't want heat to escape. Take the lid off. This is why you use the parchment. Drop it in there. Put the lid back on. Inside, 460 degrees, 10 minutes. Okay, there's that. I can come back over here. My computer setup is so awesome. It's like on like 8 books. So put this away really quick. Okay, so one thing when you okay, you make the dough, right? Sits in here for an hour, right? Take it out, form it again. Sits in there another hour. Take it, put it in the banneton. Then you cover it just with a tea towel, like a little towel. Let it sit overnight. Okay. So we're going to talk about 2 things. First, the dough. After that dough is made, and it is, you saw when I pulled it out, it's jiggly. Okay. This is super important. If you, in the terminology, we're letting it rise, right? We're letting the dough rise or proof. Like that's what's happening. These are stages of fermentation, and that's what's happening. The gases are getting in there and it's rising. This is really important. It's like super, super important. It is always better to underproof your dough than overproof your dough, okay? If it says you should proof it for 10 hours, 10 hours, whatever. Okay, 10 hours go by, right? This is kind of a trial and error thing. If it's underproofed, which means it should rise a little more at room temperature, if it hasn't gone the whole way, yeah, it's not ideal. But when you put it in the oven, there's going to be that last bit of heat, which the yeast is going to freak out, and it's called oven spring, and we're going to get it with this too, and it's going to rise even more, right? And then once the yeast reaches a certain temperature, then they're dead, and then it doesn't rise anymore, okay? If you overproof your dough, which means you let it sit too long at room temperature, the yeast dies because it doesn't have anything else to eat, right? It ate through everything, like all the flour, the water, like it ate, it's done, right? When that happens, it eats through the protein and everything. It weakens the protein strands, which is going to make your dough fall. I've watched this happen at my house. I taught myself, right? Don't overproof it, because I overproofed something one time, right? When I went to take it out and form it and everything, it just ripped. And once it ripped, it just collapsed. Like you saw this dough, how it was a nice dome and it sat. It was jiggly, but it was like set in place. if we let that proof for like another couple of hours, when I go to turn that over, if any small thing happens, like if any little piercing of that exterior happens, the whole thing just deflates. And there's nothing you can do. Trust me, I tried. I'm like, maybe I'll throw it in the oven and see what happens. Maybe I'll have crackers. It's disgusting. Don't even try. So that's like really, really important to know, right? When you talk about proofing or rising or the resting of the dough, and a recipe is talking about resting it, just remember, if you underproof it, not ideal, but it'll be okay. If you overproof it, it might not work out. Now, so that's going in the oven, right? Time's up. Okay, we're doing good. When I did my test run, I didn't have this account when Zoom's only free. So I was like talking like a million miles an hour to the guinea pigs I had. So this is actually nice. I can take my test. Okay, so now this is the important stuff we gotta kind of chat about. It was brought up earlier. What if I don't have X, Y, and Z, right? What if I don't have the equipment, chef, that you're showing me, that you're working with today? Okay, let's talk about some troubleshooting, or let's talk about some ways where we can work with that. Okay, number one, starter. Starter's never a problem, okay? You just need a plastic container. It could be it doesn't matter. You just need a container to keep the starter in, and a loose lid like this. That's it. To make the starter, you need a mixing bowl, right? That's what you need. You need a mixing bowl to make the starter, and you need a mixing bowl to feed the starter, right? A bowl scraper helps. They're like $3, okay? If you don't have one, you can use a wooden spoon, okay? It's okay. If maybe you can't scrape everything, okay? This is actually this is an awesome wooden spoon because it's like flat and everything, but if you have something you can't, it's fine. You can use a wooden spoon, okay? I always try and think about this stuff like, what did people do like 300 years ago, okay? Like, they didn't have plastic bowl scrapers, right? They had a stick of wood, you know? So there's that, okay? KitchenAid. You do not need a KitchenAid, right? You can make that, like when I took the starter and I took the flour and the water and the salt, you can do that in a bowl. It does help to have one of these, but like I say, you could do it with a wooden spoon. What you would do is you would start mixing it, right? It's going to start coming together. It's still going to be kind of floury and yucky and whatever, right? Once it starts coming together a little, you're going to dump it out onto your countertop, and then you're going to start doing those motions I was doing. Now, because you didn't have the KitchenAid to start it, when you're doing those motions, your fingers are going to be really gunky, right? And you're going to flip out. You're literally going to be like, oh my God, there's not enough flour. I measured this wrong. It sucks. No, don't think like that. Don't think like that. You keep working it. You keep working it. Keep working it. It's going to take more time, right? It'll probably take 10 to 12 minutes, right? And your arms will get a workout. But trust me, you keep doing that. You keep doing that. That folding, that moving, that stretching, right? Don't flour anything. Let the natural gluten form, and you saw earlier how it picked up on its own, right? It picked up on its own. So just remember that. And then you can flour it. You can put it back in a mixing bowl. If you don't have the KitchenAid, back in the mixing bowl you had before, cover with plastic wrap, let rest for an hour, take out, let rest for an hour again. You'll be fine. Okay, now for the crucial part of this, which I have the Banneton, the wicker basket. This took me a while to learn. I'll be right back. We got tons of these goofy bags everywhere. I don't know. Okay, so this is when I first got into baking. Okay. This is a towel, right? Or it looks like a towel, right? It's actually, this is called a couche, okay? It's a towel, right? But this is not a towel you want to like dry your hands or dry your body with. It's pure, it's really hard linen, right? So the thing about this is, versus just any other towel, trial and error, guys, I'm telling you, this was all trial and error, right? I found the dough, because this dough, like I said, has a high hydration, no matter how much flour I used in a regular towel, right, it was still sticking. So I don't know, maybe you just have to add a ton flour. I just watched some Irish baker. He's like, I just throw a little flour in there. And I was like, dude, mine stuck like crazy. But anyway, so, so, you know, the idea is you have a bowl. The idea is you put the towel in the bowl. Oh, shoot. Put the towel in the bowl, right? And then you put the dough in there, okay? It hasn't worked well for me, but I'm confident that it can work. I think you really need to use a lot of flour. Now, if you make a dough that doesn't have as much hydration, like a high water level, it's a little bit different, right? But this is, so anyway, so one of the things you can do with this, what's kind of nice, it's hard to make the boule, which is the ball shape, with this, right? But you can make a batar, like an oval, like not a baguette, not so much a skinny baguette, but kind of like a, I don't know, think of like a Jimmy John's kind of size, right? And then you just kind of fold it. I'll give you an example. 10-minute timer went off. I'm just taking the lid off. I can show you. Okay. Hi. Okay. All I'm doing is taking the lid off. Red rose, yay. Okay, so back in the oven it comes because we don't want it to get cold. Okay. 15 minutes. 15 more minutes, okay? Then we got more time after that. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this tilted down. Okay, so rolling pins or just something. As you can see, I have a rolling pin. I have 2 rolling pins. They're not the same, right? One, you know, I am as much of a garage sale type person as anyone. But if you imagine this is like the raw dough, right? You put it, and then you just kind of pick it up on the sides like that, okay? And then all you would do is put some type of other apparatus on each side of the dough, right? Because like with this basket, this basket creates the shape of the dough. If you just put this dough out, like when I rolled it in a ball, or like kind of in a ball, and if I just put it on like this overnight, I would wake up the next day and it would be like, it would be all over. This dough doesn't just hold its shape on its own. It needs to be put in something that will hold its shape, i.e., you know, like I was saying, like this, okay? I have a baking stone. If you don't have a baking stone, you can use a sheet pan. In an ideal world, what you're looking to
Can everybody still see Chef right now? Or is it just me that I can't see you?
I don't know.
I guess it's just me. I think everybody else can. All right,
I
keep going.
see.
Sorry.
And see,
All
Chef
right.
just can't see the tabletop.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So I had to experiment and I had to try a lot of different ways out, okay? If you guys, you know, if you want, you could also, this is also something you can do with the recipe I'm gonna send you, okay? I'm gonna send you a recipe for a starter, okay? Then I'm gonna send you a recipe for the dough with the actual bread. Cool, awesome, you know? Feel free to change the recipe as you see fit, If you do not have a banneton, if you do not have a couche, like a lining towel, that's fine. Try making the dough with a little more flour and have it hold together, and then just put it on a sheet pan and put it in the oven and see what happens. It's valuable. I am telling you this 100%. You'll learn a lot just by that. I learned a lot by teaching myself. Also, I got really nervous today because our place that we live in, we don't have central air or central heat or anything. We have radiators. So when I woke up today at 5 in the morning, I looked at the dough that I was resting. It was really cold out here. Not cold, like it's not freezing, but like cool. So I had to find ways to make sure this dough rose enough by the time I put this video on for everyone, right? So this is all trial and error. Like it really is. It's a lot of trial and error. You have to feel the dough. You have to feel like the temperature in the air. It's a very natural thing. It's a living organism, the sourdough, right? It's going to react appropriately. One thing that's really important when you are resting your dough, I kind of bouncing all over here, and I apologize, but like no drafts. Don't put it anywhere drafty, right? You want, wherever you have it, try and have it be the most controlled temperature and humid, whatever environment you can find, right? Sometimes that could be placing it in a microwave. Don't turn the microwave on, right? Just placing it in the microwave because it's a very controlled environment, okay? I just mentioned that this is super important too. I didn't talk about it because I'm, of course, doing this, but Dutch oven, put it in the oven, okay? Why Dutch oven, Cal? You know, what are you doing? Okay, so the first part of the cooking process is going to take about 30 minutes to cook, start to finish, okay? The first 10 minutes I'm reserving. I'm putting it in Dutch oven. I'm putting the lid on top to create steam, right? I'm creating steam. The reason it's creating steam, well, for one, you're putting something with a lot of, you know, liquid into a pot and then putting a top on, but you are creating steam. What happens is the steam prevents the outside crust from forming, and it allows the yeast to keep eating and puffing up. So once again, if you create steam, right, and not dry heat, steam, you don't create that crust right away. Like what is eventually going to be the crust. It's not going to harden. It's going to stay soft. When it stays soft, the yeast keeps eating and growing and bubbling, and it can expand more. Okay? The more expansion you get, the more light and airy crumb you get. Okay? And then after 10 minutes, you saw me take the lid off once, or take the lid off. I'll cook it for, you know, I don't know, 50, it all changes, you know. It's like I said, it's a natural thing. Gets me off the hook with some things. But another probably 20 minutes, 15, 20, yeah, about probably another 20 minutes of cooking with the lid off, because now the bread is expanded. Now we want the crust. Now we want to get that nice crispy crust in.
Chef, quick question.
Yep.
I have a Dutch oven that is cast iron. Is that fine?
Yep. Yep, that is absolutely fine. I also do want to say, you know, guys, like doing this stuff. I just did it last, September. I started making the starter, or August or something, because I wanted to teach myself something. I've made bread before, but like I made it like a couple times. Doesn't mean, and I was like, I want to teach myself and I want to learn how to get good at it. I can definitely say, guys, if you do something like this, it's kind of is a labor of love. You're going to be teaching yourself a lot of different stuff about, you know, temperatures and like textures and how things feel, and like what kind of equipment you want to have, or what kind of stuff you need to buy, like all this stuff. But if you are going to do it and you're going to invest the time and a little bit of money into doing it, it is definitely worth it. But also you kind of then feel like a little bit of responsibility to your starter, right? Like that's, I mean, I've had this since last September. I mean, some people get really emotional about it. I don't get it. I'm not going to get emotional. Like it's bacteria. Okay. It's, you know, okay. But I do, it's like, I made this starter and it's like, okay, I made a starter. It's no big deal. But I've been feeding it now for 14 months, you know, it's getting more complex flavor. If anything happened and I just flipped out one day, I was like, I hate sourdough and I wanted to get rid of this, I actually probably wouldn't do it. I would probably reach out to a lot of people I know and be like, I'd probably split this up. And I'd be like, you guys want this? Like, it's already been going for like a year. And be like, why don't you want it? Be like, I got tired of making dough. I'm off dough. You know, I'm a salad guy now. Whatever. But that's the most important part is that, like, I've committed the time to this thing. So I'm always, even if you're not making dough, like, even if you're not making bread, I still I refresh it. You know, there's sometimes, especially in the summer when it gets super hot outside, we don't have central air, so we have window units. We don't like baking. It's hot. It's hot in here. So, you know what? It's not a big deal if I got to throw some starter out and just refresh it once a week. It's no big deal. I was losing my mind in the springtime, though, because when we went on the first lockdown and everyone decided to become an amateur baker and there was no bread flour anywhere, and I was going to every store in Chicago, and I'd be like, do you have any bread flour? They're like, no. And you go, and it looks like a bread flour apocalypse. And now there's all this bread flour that's probably sitting in people's pantries, and they already gave up on it. You know, I want that stuff. That's my little rant. So the bread is baking. I'm just gonna wipe up this really quick. But now definitely, guys, thank you, Cindy, for paying attention to the chat. Do you guys have any questions while we wait for the bread?
How long does it take you to bake that loaf of bread usually?
About 30 minutes. 25 to 30 minutes, you know?
So about 10 with the lid on and
yeah,
20 without the lid?
Yeah, about 15 to 20 with it off. It'll only be like another 20 minutes. I mean, we don't have to all stay here and wait for it, but it is really cool to see it come out of the oven. It's like when I bake by myself and no one's here, I take the spread out. I always take pictures and I send it to people. And they're like, that looks good. And that's it. Okay, but actually, through the magic of TV and everything, of course, I tried to stay a step ahead. So I made bread the other night, right? The only reason I made the bread the other night was, yes, so I could eat it, but also so if we were waiting for this, we can wait for the bread to come out of the oven. But just like meat and how Chef Cindy taught in class, everything needs to rest. Bread needs to rest too. You do not take bread right out of the oven and cut into it. It needs to chill. Doesn't mean it needs to like get completely room temperature, okay? But it really should, okay? There's a whole scientific thing about how it reacts with your saliva. It's weird, right? But honestly, when you take the bread out of the oven and there's that beautiful crust, there's steam trapped in there. Like, let the steam cool. Let it like do its job. Like, just trust me on that. So let it rest. And we got the wire rack. So you saw that I did the circle, with the loop with the razor, right? This one I didn't. This one I just did a straight slash. But okay. Ooh. I'm doing that for my own sake. So. Okay. I usually have a bunch of stuff over here, like a kettle and like a knife block and everything, but I was like, well, let me try and make it, you know, aside from the pig, you know, I was like, let me make it like a studio. So I'm going to use this knife. So it's just a bread knife, but I don't know where I got this thing, but. I hope this looks, yeah, it's not bad. Okay. Little dents right here, right? Like right here. What you see right here. See right here. See those pockets, right? It's one of the characteristics of sourdough, right? Irregularities. I don't like too many irregularities. Like sometimes there's like big, huge pockets. Some people like them. I'm like so-so on them. One of the big reasons is like if you ever got bread like that and you have to do a canapé party, a hors d'oeuvre party, and you got like steak tartare, it just falls through the hole and then you can't use it. So, but you know, that's what we're looking at. Okay. Right. Same. It's like right there, that nice little pocket, kind of on the edge, right? But it smells good. Okay. I want to share it with you, but I can't. So I made pea soup. That's what tonight is. It's pea soup and old bread. Just gonna wrap this up.
Steph, do you have any books or other good resources that are?
Yes. 1 second.
So I've typed a couple guys in the chat box there too. So
This book was my reference tool. Okay, this guy, Richard Bertonet. He's a French guy that he moved to like England. Okay, this book, it comes with a DVD, which I haven't even looked at, so I don't even know what's on that. But this book really helped me a lot. This one's really good. I think it won James Beard Award and everything.
we got a question about what the temperature the starter should stay at in general. I don't know if you.
Good question. Hold on 1 sec. Let me just because it's about to go off. So okay, so you can. I don't know if you can see. I'll try to make it quick. It's starting to get brown. Okay, it's not all the way there yet though. So I'm just gonna rotate it. And I think I'm just gonna go. It looks like it's feeling like maybe just 10 more minutes. I think. So. Okay, so I said question again.
It was, what specific temperature should the starter stay at? So if you're putting it in the fridge or if you're doing room temp, and can you freeze your starter?
Freezing starter. I've never done it. I haven't really read about it. Like this book that I just showed you, this book, he suggests what you do is you take starter if you're not going to use it, and you spread it on like a tray, and you dry it. And once you dry, all the water evaporates, and then you grind it like a food processor, and it becomes granules. And then when you want to like reuse it again, like then it's fine. It's just like dormant, right? You could keep it just in the fridge in like a just jar. And then when you want to use it, you just add a little water to it. Temperature in the fridge, it's like 40 degrees, you know, it's fine. Room temp is room temp. Just also remember, so we talked about water, right? We talked about levels of water. The higher level of water, you're going to have to feed the starter or use it more. It's kind of the same thing with the fridge and room temperature, right? So if I got my starter here, even though it's stiff, right? If I leave this out at room temperature overnight, it's really going to puff up. Like, it's going to like double in volume. Right? It's really going to get puffy. If I put it in the fridge, it's going to take like 3 days to get to like that point, like to get to that puffiness. So just remember, if you want to keep your starter out at room temperature, there's nothing wrong with that. But you're probably going to need to use it more often, or you're just going to need to feed it more often. So that's why a stiff starter in the fridge, like less water in the starter and put it in the fridge. Like, I'm not going to touch this until, I don't know, like Monday. Like, it's just going to sit there. It'll be fine. And then Monday comes around. If I decide to make bread, I can make bread. If I decide to start refresh it, I'll just like I said, I'll keep like 200 grams of the starter I'll add another 200 grams of flour and another 100 grams of water. And when I get there, then I'll like mix it all up, put it right back in here, discard what I'm not using, put it right back in here, let it sit at room temp for like an hour, you know, hour to 4 hours, whatever, just let it sit, and then throw it back in the fridge, and it'll be good for, you know, another 4 to 5 days.
Cool.
So we got 7 minutes, okay? If anyone can hang out for 7 minutes, if you can't, no problem. I get it. Sorry, I shouldn't be doing my thing. If you can't, it's not a problem. I get it. People got stuff to do. But if you can, just so you can see the final product, and then there's one more part I want to show you about tapping it, so you kind of like can hear and can see it. Overall, was this and anyone can do thumbs up, or you can unmute yourself, whatever. But like, was this somewhat interesting for everyone?
It's a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Cool. Well, don't get too excited or overconfident, because that's how I thought when I first made my starter. I was like, I got this. It's no problem. And then I literally was like reading these recipes, and I was like, I don't need like all this starter. I'm barely gonna be able to use it. I literally, the first batch of starter I made, it was like this much. And I was like, yeah, I just need to temper my expectations. Yeah, that was stupid. Like that was like, I made like 80 grams of starter. Like it was enough to like put in my hand. And I was like, okay, so. Has it been hours since then? I mean, I could show you. It hasn't been a full hour, but it's okay. Okay. How was the video quality good for you guys? Video and the sound?
The video quality was good.
And the
Yeah,
sound.
it's perfect.
So and just making sure the sound, because yeah, I did this before and I was using like not a personal but like the free account, and it kept like cutting out and everything, and I kind of was getting a little nervous about that. So okay, so it's been sitting for an hour. See, I don't know if you can see, it still kind of pulls a little, but see, it pulls away, right? It's not sticky. I mean, it's tacky, but it's not like, it's really hard to do this reverse.
We can see it, Chef.
Okay, so still soft, right? It didn't come out in a ball. It didn't come out like a hard piece of dough, right? Soft. Same thing. Now, might be a little, I don't know about the quality, but now it's starting to be a little smoother. It's really hard to see, sorry. But see, it's also still tacky, right? Got to kind of just move fast with it. Once again, flour the mixing bowl, right? Lightly flour tabletop. You don't have to knead it a long time, or work, whatever. You don't have to do it a lot for a long time.
Chef, what are you going to do with all this bread you got?
Oh my God, I was just going to talk about that. I don't know if you can see it. No, you can't. I was just going to show you guys, there's actually some air bubbles already starting to form, which means that like the dough or the starter in here right now is really alive, right? Like it's really like starting to feed quick. So, see? So now it's like kind of reworking that gluten. Now it's kind of like coming together in a ball, okay? What am I going to do with all this bread? That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, it's, what's really nice about, what's really great about doing this though, about making bread, aside from just like actually making it and like really enjoying it, is like, if you get in a habit of doing it, like it's pretty awesome to go to the store and get some cold cuts, but then have it on your own bread. It's just far superior, because like, you guys know that like, so like unless you go to a bakery. So I went to Mariano's. Everyone's been to Mariano's. I went to Mariano's like a year or so ago, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys have some yeast?" And they're like, "What?" Yeah, over in the aisle. It's like, "No, fresh yeast." Oh, I actually could try that. They're like, "No, we don't have any fresh yeast." They got that whole baking farm. I'm like, "You guys bake all this bread here?" They're like, "No, we don't." And I was like, "Oh, okay." They make it at an offsite and it comes. So we didn't use this because, of course, we just started doing a natural one. And this got kind of dried out, guys. But do you guys remember from class, Chef showing active dry yeast? Remember the little granule?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
This is fresh yeast. This is cake yeast. It's sold in a block. A lot of times a 2-ounce block. It's really cool if you do the research and look up how this is made. It's like a whole yeast factory and everything. It's crazy, but it's crumbly. It's crumbly, like pebbly. When I make bread with fresh yeast, I take it and I crumble the yeast into the flour. Okay, I don't put it in water to dissolve it. I let it mingle with the flour, so to speak. Sorry, my hands are really nasty now.
Yeah, fresh yeast can be a little bit harder to find, but sometimes Jewel will have it. Sometimes Mariano has it. Usually in the near the butters, things like that,
Yeah.
and they usually sell them in much smaller quantities than what Chef had. They're kind of smaller cubes.
Yeah.
There are ways to substitute your yeast, but if something asks for fresh yeast, it probably really wants that.
Yeah, and there is, and there's you can look them up. There's like yeast conversion charts for fresh to dry and everything like that. Fresh yeast is like really, really awesome to use. I mean, it really is. It's amazing. It's really good. What's really great about active dry yeast is how shelf stable it is. This goes bad. Luckily, like this costs like 98 cents, right? It's super, super cheap. There's one place by my house that has it. So, okay, bread's about ready. I was able to talk about nothing for 10 minutes. So, okay, all right, great. This is muy bellissimo. Okay. Ta-da! You guys see it? Cool? Yeah. It's awesome, right? So, if everyone can hear, I really hope. So, testing to know if your bread is done. You could have thermometers. There's thermometers. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Tend to do the old-timey way of doing it is just picking it up. It should sound hollow. Okay. I don't know if in class I ever showed you, or if anyone knew about that, but another thing is that like cooking food, like chicken or something like that. Beef's a little different, of course, because there's different temperatures that like you learn in class. But like chicken, for example, like roasting a chicken to know it's done, right? Yes, you can use thermometers. Another way is like if you tilt it so the cavity is like the cavity is facing down. The juices that run out of there, if they're clear, it's done. Another way is if you took just a regular knife, like it's like a little steak knife or a paring knife, put it in like the leg, like the leg area. Just let it sit there, like up against the bone for like, I don't know, 10 seconds. Take the knife out and put it on your lip. And if it's hot, like really hot, it's done. So that's like old, whatever. So yeah, but back to the bread. Cool though, huh? That's why I like the spiral. I just think it looks cool. Scoring your bread kind of helps to release some of that steam. But the big thing about it's called scoring. I say scoring. It's cutting, but it's called scoring. The biggest reason that was done was like way back in the day, right? When like if you were in a small little village and everyone's baking their bread, how do you know whose bread is whose? Make a little thing. Like that's That's true too, by the way. I didn't make that up. That is legitimately true. So some people do like a square. If you Google sourdough bread images, you'll see like squares and slashes and all different ones. But yeah, it was to differentiate, you know, your bread from someone else's. So I always like saying that. I think it's an interesting fact. That's about it, guys and gals. Does anyone have any questions? Further questions, I should say. You guys can take yourself off mute. Or not. I mean, no one wants to say anything. If no one wants to say anything, but
It looks like there's no further questions, Jeff.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Well, I hope everyone is doing well. Okay. We're going to do more of these in the future when I can figure out. If you guys have any ideas, right, for things that you might like to learn, like that's not too specific, right? Like sourdough bread is very it's kind of vague. But if there's something, just let us know. You know, just keep in mind one thing, and I was talking to someone about this the other day. If we do play around with any new food ideas or recipes, we always just want to make sure we're doing stuff that, while it can be technical, we want to make sure that we're doing stuff that we can all kind of maybe do at home that doesn't require too much special equipment. Sometimes it's fun to have special equipment. We can goof around. Like I will eventually probably make something with the meat grinder and sausage for everyone like to see, but we also want to make sure we like balance that just a little with stuff that we all have access to. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you everyone for coming. It was good seeing everyone and a little
Thank you.
Little small.
Thank you, Chef Kyle.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.